Happy Halloween! There's no way I was gonna let Halloween go by without saying Happy Halloween! And I think this thing is crooked. But okay, I'll be crooked. That's alright. So anyway, Happy Halloween! As you know, that's my favorite holiday. So I thought that I would get on here and tell you a couple of ghost stories, real ones, real experiences that I have had. And me being crooked is bothering me a little bit, so hold on just a moment. Maybe I can fix it. Or maybe I can't fix it. Did I fix it? I think I fixed it. Okay, so my first ghost story, that candle looks closer to me than it really is. It's not really gonna light my hair on fire or anything, so no extra excitement for you today. My first one, I don't remember at all. I have no memory whatsoever of it, but my mom told me whenever I was a very small child, probably 2, something like that, I had my own bedroom, and I used to wake up in the middle of the night crying and coughing, and she'd come in to check on me, and I would tell her there was a little red man sitting on my dresser and that he was making my room all smoky. So I'm glad I don't have any memory of that. Of course, you know, she thought that I was having nightmares and would do what any parent would do and, you know, comfort their child and everything. But I guess this went on several times where I would say there was a little red man on my dresser. So she eventually, I guess, took me out of that room, and then my uncle was staying in that room, and he got really freaked out because apparently when he was in that room, he said he saw, my doggy's over here, you want to sit on my lap? He said that he saw like a light in the closet, and it started out really small, and then it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it looked like there was all this smoke. And of course he hightailed it out of that room, and so shortly thereafter they moved. Because, you know, there's one thing, I guess, a little kid seeing something in the middle of the night and thinking that it's nightmares, and then a grown man seeing something and freaking out over it. So I don't know what all that was about. I don't know. I don't want to know. I'm glad I don't remember it. It kind of freaks me out when I think about it. You know, what in the world can a little red man be? You know, I don't even want to think about it. So that's the first one. The second one is, and I definitely remember this, but we moved into a really old farmhouse in Fontana, Kansas. As a matter of fact, it was so old it didn't even have indoor plumbing. You know, I'm 44 years old. You'd think that I would have not grown up in any area that had no indoor plumbing, but my family at the time was extremely poor. The rent, now he picks the time to play with a toy. Nathan, come here, Bubba. You want to say hi? It's funny, he's playing with a stuffed pumpkin. So anyway, this house had no indoor plumbing. It was very, very old. It, I think the rent was like $50 a month. It had no like central air, heat, all that. Our heat was with a wood stove. And then in the winter we would all pile up in one room to sleep on mattresses because the house would get so cold. It was just a really bad situation. Luckily we didn't live in the house for long. But there was a ghost in that house, and I believe it was female, and I don't think she was mean or anything, but I saw her several times, always like out of my peripheral vision. And one time I distinctly remember because I was going through my closet looking for something to wear that day, and I thought it was my mom, came up behind me, you know, and I felt her touch my shoulder, and I turned around. And I kept looking, and I kept looking, and I was talking, you know, like, oh, I think I'm gonna wear this or whatever. And so then I turned around, she was gone. And I went downstairs into the kitchen, and I says, well, why did you leave? I thought you were helping me pick out some clothes. And she's like, I wasn't up there. And which of course freaked me out because this touched me. I felt it touched me on the shoulder, and I thought it was my mom, like in her nightgown, because from, you know, when I kind of went like this and out of my peripheral vision, the lady had long hair, and so did my mom, and I thought she was wearing like a white nightgown with little green flowers on it. And I don't remember my mom having a nightgown like that, but I do remember my mom having one that had blue flowers, so I thought that maybe I had just seen it wrong. So that really freaked me out, but I saw that several times. But the reason I think that whoever that was really friendly was in my room at that house, we had the kind of attic that you can go in and it's completely floored and you can stand up in it and everything. And it had a little tiny door. Well, I was sitting in my room reading, and that little tiny door opened. And I was, you know, like in scary movies when people go investigate like idiots? Well, I went to investigate because I never felt threatened by that lady, whoever she was. I didn't see her a whole ton. And this was after that day that I felt something touch me on the shoulder. It's like then I knew she wasn't mean. I don't know. I can't even explain how I know, but I know she wasn't mean. So that door opened, and I thought, well, I'm going to check and see what it is. And I'm glad I did because, like I said, we had a wood stove. And, you know, there's, of course, a chimney. Well, I went, and when I opened that door, there was fire coming out from between the bricks in that chimney. And so I ran and I told my dad. And so they immediately put the wood stove out and got a hold of the people that come out and clean, like the creosote and everything out of your chimney. And our house would have caught fire because the mortar between the bricks was loose, the bricks were loose, the creosote was really built up, and there was actual flames coming out of there. And you know how attics, you store a whole bunch of stuff, so our house would have went up in flames. So I think that lady saved us. And, you know, shortly thereafter, I think my dad must have got a better job, but we moved to Iowa. So I didn't have any other experiences in a house that I lived in, at least that I can remember. But I did, then my parents, they moved to Iowa, then they moved, I don't know, we moved everywhere. Well, my parents didn't move to Iowa, I moved to Iowa too. We moved to Iowa, then we moved to Missouri, then they ended up moving to New Hampshire, then they moved back to Missouri, and then now they're in a different place in Missouri. But anyway, one of the places they lived in for a really long time, actually, the longest I think they ever lived anywhere, was in a place in Hillsboro, Missouri. And it was, again, a really old house. This house had, you know, plumbing and everything. It was kind of a cool house. You could tell that it had been, but it was over 100 years old, and you could tell that it had been, it had like two kitchens. It had a kitchen upstairs and a kitchen downstairs and like a back staircase, like the upstairs was maybe I don't know if it was the main living quarters, and the downstairs were like the maids or whatever would have been or whatever, but it was just a really neat house and really old. Well, my mom had always thought that it was haunted because, and my grandma had lived there at the time too, because they would hear things and everything. And I actually had a couple of experiences in that house, and so did a lot of my family did. And my sister's, I think he was her boyfriend at the time, actually had something that terrified him. He was like in a room up there and something sat on his bed and he thought it was my sister. I guess they had had an argument, and so he thought she was coming to make up or whatever, and it wasn't her. He saw something. He wouldn't really talk about it. He just, you know, screamed like a girl and took off. But the experiences I had there, one wasn't scary, the other was terrifying to me, but I think whatever was in that house liked to play tricks. And my mom had talked about happening to her. My dad used to sometimes go, you know, they're short of money, and so there was one year that they went to Mississippi and would work and then come home like on the weekends, and she didn't want him to go, and something kept hiding his keys. But anyway, what happened to me was I was sitting in that same room that eventually, it was my brother Jeff's room, and he didn't ever have any issues. Well, like I said, the upstairs had another kitchen. It also had another bathroom, and the kitchen I don't think the gas and stuff worked in it, so my mom just used it as a craft room. But there was a shower and a bath and everything in there. Well, I was sitting in the room reading again. I like to read. There's the dog again. And I saw my brother walk by with a towel on his head. You know, I thought he had just come out of the shower. The posters that were hanging on my brother Jeff's wall even moved, you know, from the wind of the person walking by. And so it was my brother Ricky I thought I saw go by. And so I was like, Ricky, come here, you know, and he didn't listen to me. He just kept on going. And so I got up and I was going to follow him downstairs. And so I went downstairs and he's in the kitchen. No towel on his head, fully dressed, and nobody had been up in that shower. It wasn't even wet. So whatever it was, it looked like it had something on its head. And it walked by and it caused air to move. So I don't know what that was, but that scared me enough to where I was like, okay, I'm not going to be up there by myself anymore. The other thing, I think, like my mom said, these were like playful and like to play tricks or whatever. It was really, really hot in the summer, and I had just had my son, and my brothers played baseball at the time, and so everybody was going to go watch one of them play a baseball game. It was like 100 degrees that day, so I said, and it was like an evening game, so by the time they got back, it was dark and everything, but in the meantime, I said, well, I'm going to stay home with Adam because it's just really too hot, and you know, he's a little baby and I didn't want to have him out in the heat and everything. So everybody left, so it was just me and my infant son in the house, and I started hearing things upstairs, and it sounded like furniture moving. I mean, like heavy furniture moving, like somebody was taking the bed and sliding it across the floor. Freaked me out. And you know, by the time, and it was so much noise, and then you could hear like stomping. It's like something was intentionally trying to freak me out. And I ended up running into the bathroom with my son and locking the door, and he and I sat in the bathroom, leaned up against the bathtub until everybody got home. The whole time hearing all this noise going on upstairs scared me so bad. I don't remember if the only other times I would go upstairs is if my mom was up there or somebody else was up there with me. It just scared me really bad, and I think that it was intentionally trying to scare me, you know? So, now, the house we live in now, I've never had any issues, thank goodness, because it's only 6 years old. I don't think anybody's ever died here. It's built on bedrock. There's no, you know, there's no cemetery underneath, all that stuff that, you know, typically you find out about haunted houses or whatever, but so I have had experiences happen to me, so I completely believe in ghosts. I believe in things that are worse than ghosts also, and I don't delve into any of that stuff. That's what worries me about, you know, long ago, the little red man or whatever. And the funny thing about that also is that house is still there, and probably 5 years ago maybe, my mom, we drove over by that house when she was here visiting, because the house is in Kansas City, and we drove over to that house. Well, as soon as we got by the house, I started feeling like I had to vomit. I mean, I really felt like I was going to throw up, and I think it was probably just psychological. You know, it just scared me. So we didn't stay looking at the house for long, because as soon as we drove away, I felt fine. But when we were sitting there looking at the house, I thought I was going to be sick in her car. So, but I'm sure that that was just psychological, because if I think about that too much, it freaks me out. And you'd think that I wouldn't like scary stuff so much, but I do. It's like I read scary books, I watch scary movies. I was on vacation the week of October 20th, and that's what I did every day. I got on Amazon Fire TV and was just looking for scary movies. And the only one I won't watch over and over again is The Exorcist, because that one just freaks me out too bad. I've seen it a lot of times, but I can't watch it when I'm by myself. And you know, it's on a lot this time of year, and so I'm so glad now when you're flipping through the channels, you can just pull up the guide and flip through the guide without clicking through the channels. Remember when you had to click through the channels? I swear I would land on that stupid movie. It was usually always the time where she was flopping up and down on the bed, or where she was like laying there and her throat comes up and her eyes roll up in her head, or her head's turning around. It was always one of the bad parts. It was never, any of the easy parts. But I will never mess with a Ouija board. I don't get into any of, and I know there's a lot of people that don't believe any of that stuff. And all I can say is, unless you experience it yourself, I understand, why you wouldn't believe in it, or that believe ghosts exist or whatever, but I do. I mean, I've personally seen a ghost, so I completely agree, or I completely believe that they're real. And I'm fortunate, I mean, as many times as we moved when I was a kid, and sometimes we would live in really old houses, and I'm not surprised that I had an experience. And I really truly do think that house in Fontana, Kansas, that has actually been torn down since then. I don't think anybody else ever lived in it. I really think the ghost of that lady, whoever she was, saved my family. And I think that the ghosts, or whatever they were that was in the house in Hillsboro, were playful and just tried to scare people on purpose because it was fun for them. That house actually was gutted and completely redone, and now it's like an office building or something. So I don't know, maybe they're still there. But I don't really want to experience anything like that in person ever again. I mean, I don't, even whether it's friendly or not friendly, I like to see that stuff from afar. I love to read books, I love to watch movies. I'm just fascinated with scary things. To an extent, the ghosts and demon-y kind of things. I like movies like that, but I don't read a whole lot about it. I don't want to delve too much into that. It just scares me. I don't want them to think I'm interested in them because I don't. No. And I have a very strong faith in God and everything, so I'm not afraid. It's just that thing, from way back when I was very, very little, that whole smoke thing and light thing and red man thing. If I think about that too much, even though I have absolutely zero memory of it, that kind of worries me because I don't know what that could have been. And then the fact that my uncle saw it, and I think my mom said my grandpa saw it too. So I just stay away from the demonology kind of things. I've read one book on it that was written by Ed and Lorraine Warren, and that scared me even more, so I just stay away from that stuff. But ghosts and haunted stuff, I like to read about that and all that. So anyway, I just wanted to share a few little ghost stories with you because it is Halloween, and say happy Halloween, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Ooh.